I've been recently asked to explain what we're doing on porches and why it takes a little extra time, why it costs so much compared to what is usually out there in an exactimate estimate of our porch enclosure. This is what I consider a wooden porch structure that's kind of like a Minnesota screen porch. In this case, it's a kind of a screen room that's attached to a garage. In typical Florida way, you'd have a, just some structure on the corner and then filled in here with some aluminum screen systems. Those are pretty expensive for Minnesota to start with, because we don't have all those enclosures that are over the pools, and the skills, if you will, to do those from the standpoint of carpenters. So they just build these 2x4s coming through here and then staple on some screen. I'm trying to show you from the inside here. So the screen then is attached to the 4x4 post back there and then covered with some trim pieces here. So this is a 1x2 here. Whoopsie. And so the screen mesh is in between here. And so from the inside, this is where the screen stops here. So the screen is actually stapled to this wooden structure that they built and stapled on with a bunch of staples. And then the staples are covered with that trim piece. So what takes us so long to replace and repair this mesh, in the Florida version, right, you just take out a spline groove that's along the edge and just rip the screen out, and then you just start in with a new piece of screen and you're splining it in, and you're able just to start at the top, spline that in, and then spline down the sides and finish at the bottom. That takes probably about 10 minutes to do for one panel. Where this, in order to rescreen this, we're going to get out all of our power tools, all of our pry bars set up here, take off all of this wood trim. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit before I do. I need to take all of these pieces off. So it's almost destructing and destroying what's currently there. So we have to take it off very carefully so that we're not breaking other pieces that aren't really covered and attached to the screen, right? So we're not breaking pieces to add cost or have a customer get mad at us for wrecking something that's there. So typically things like these, where we're trying to take this part out, right? We have to take this part out of here when this piece doesn't even really matter because of the screen is there. So the top, this board up here, anything wider of a board always has issues with taking that off, because wider cedar boards, get these cracks in them. So if I take this board off just all willy-nilly and just pull it off, it's probably going to break that piece. So I got to just very carefully go through like a surgeon and take all these pieces of wood off, so we're not breaking them. If they do get broken, it's all of the wood's fault, not our fault. We're doing our due diligence not to break them, but sometimes you just can't do it. In this particular case, I'll show you right here. So this is siding that's on the house, right? And they use these big gigantic nails to hold the siding in so that it doesn't come off. Well, what did they put on this here? The same exact nail is meant not to come off. This is meant to come off. That's why these things are so difficult. No one rescreens them very easily and quickly. They wait till you get a lot of holes in them, and then we go to repair them. So I gotta take this board off, and there's no way of me taking this without a lot of force, right? So I'm gonna try to take this board off without breaking it. Let's just count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nails in there holding on this tiny piece of wood that they probably need about 2 to 4 pins in to hold it on, because it's just a trim piece. So this, and then this piece over here was nicely selected from the get-go, so it's going to be nice and thin and have a tendency to break when we're trying to pry out this piece. So you got to take very cautious. I'm spending so much time on just explaining this piece of it, of removing this wood, as that's what we do. It's about half of the time just to get the porch ready to be screened. Now the next part of the screen is we have to go back and actually hang the screen, as opposed to taking 30 seconds to take out that screen and then screening in about 10 minutes. This whole process here takes a whole good day just to screen this porch, right? So we're taking off all the wood. Now when we go to staple on the screen, we're using staplers and stapling that piece. If you've ever tried to staple fabric onto anything, a craft or anything like that, you realize that quickly that if you don't pull just in the right fashion, that the fabric starts to go wonky on you, right? So we have to do our due diligence to staple it, and every time we're stapling it, we're correcting that wonkiness to it. So it's not just, you know, and going, so we're stapling it. We use a lot of staples because any force on that screen, the less staples you have, the less areas it's covering, the more likelihood of it's going to get pulled out. Therefore, people will call us back, or we'll get a bad review on Angie's List, Google, Home Advisor, or whatnot. So we just take our time to make sure that we're putting it in to the tight professional manner that we are hired for. So stapling all the way down, stapling across, right? And so the piece that I probably did mention is, hey, these boards are coming off, where do we put them? Okay, well, we're not just throwing away the spline, right, and just getting rid of the spline. We got to take that board off. That board right there and that board right there, that one's going to be 80 inches long, and that's going to be 86 inches long, because when they build these things, they're never squared, right? So they're building them and cutting them as they build them. So I got to take these two pieces off, you know, lay them in the grass so they come back down. So when we put them back up, those two exact pieces are coming back up here. So there's extra added, call it non-added value time, for me to take these boards and lay them down, so that we can put them back up, right? So once we get all the screens stapled in, then we're going to put these back up. Well, there's nails in here that we got to nail back off and put back in, and then we got to pin them with some extra nails, because now those holes that the nails go into are kind of loose, so we're reaffirming the trim board so they're not going to come off. And then that's pretty much the process. This particular porch is kind of, you know, you can tell they're kind of just pieces pieced together, so it's just a lot more intricacies within this, like kind of 3 pieces of wood here. We're only needing to take this piece off, but then this whole bottom piece has to come off. So sometimes that sandwiching down there, so we really have to finesse it to get it out. This long piece that's right here, you know, in order to screen this piece, we got to take this off. Well, now there's this seam right here down below, so that piece has to come off. When that piece comes off, that's probably going to be rotted down there, so then we have to worry about that and making sure that that's not going to fall apart. All the joys here for the Minnesota wooden screen porch that we have to do. So, and I'll lastly just highlight, a lot of times the reason why we're replacing screens because it's aluminum mesh. This is actually fiberglass mesh, so you can typically tell fiberglass mesh when the hail hits it. It's kind of got these little tiny holes from where the hail hit, versus aluminum is dented and bented, right? And so this is actually a more cost-effective mesh, so this would be a lower price. This one is the same mesh that's typically in the Florida porch enclosures. It's called a pool and patio fiberglass mesh screen. So